Hello, everyone. I'm Haeyang Lee, and I am the country director of Ashoka Korea, and also I'm leading the Next Now's New Longevity, which is Ashoka's global initiative. I'll be your facilitator for this session for the next 45 minutes. We are very thrilled to have you join the Ashoka Changemaker Summit 2021, the global yearly milestone to share cutting-edge ideas and solutions with like-minded changemakers across the world. This year's edition explores the concept of a new togetherness powered by new technologies and also by the historical legacy of hundreds of community-led movements that already recognize how togetherness can change the world long before COVID-19 hit. Today, we will explore the topic of the power of arts and culture to change mindsets on aging. We are living in a world where human life expectancy has almost doubled just over 1 century, the so-called longevity revolution. However, not only our systems and institutions, but also our mindsets are still living in the world that's disappearing. Moreover, it's time to understand the big difference between adding years to life and adding life to years. But why arts and culture? Because we believe in the power to change our mindsets. My colleague will share the screen. You are seeing an artwork created by an elementary school student in South Korea. What an extraordinary artwork. He was actually born blind, and he had to fly from South Korea to Thailand to be allowed to get close enough and to touch a real elephant. Now, his creative artwork is viewed by the public in various exhibitions. Art has such a power to reveal our innate creativity and also to challenge our deep-rooted prejudice. Also, we believe in the power of popular culture. Just take the example of the sensation of Squid Game. I'm not going to talk about the content, but 142 million households within the first 4 weeks of after it was premiered. Something like this could not have happened before. So even with the less attractive theme of getting old, there are so many interesting and interconnected, well-made content, including films, TV shows, novels out there, which have already changed someone's life or is about to do so. Next, we believe in the power of social innovation and the people who have authored and literally created those solutions, who are social innovators, like the people on our panel today. Now there are so many of them around the world. Recently, Ashoka Korea team developed a mobile app called Changemaker Library, where you can browse thousands of social innovators with almost everyone having a powerful story to tell the world. But the majority of them are still unknown to the world, not to mention this creative industry. So just like the main title of this ACMS event, A New Togetherness, we thought about connecting and bringing these powerful forces together for a bigger impact. Thank you. Before we jump into the session with our panelists, and hear from our amazing speakers today, I have one important logistical announcement. Members of the Ashoka community following us from Subcard can share some questions by writing them down in the chat, and also invited to the facilitated connecting session happening right after this conversation, where you can continue your reflection and share your experiences in a more interesting and interactive setting. Okay, let's have our speakers today. We have two Ashoka Fellows from USA, Mark Friedman, President and CEO of Encore.org, and Ann Basting, founder of Time Slips. And our third speaker from South Korea, Jung-soon is artist and founder of NGO Another Way of Seeing. And actually, the Touching the Elephant project I introduced was Director Um's idea, and is still ongoing as a regular project in Korea. Okay, our next about 20 minutes discussion will be with Anne and Mark, which will be followed by the second part, a short presentation by Director Okay, welcome Anne and Mark. I'm so thrilled to have these two fellows joining our session today, because they have very special passion for art and culture. But before we going into the theme, can you please describe your work and vision that pretty much involve older adults in our society, of which demographic size is unprecedentedly increasing all over the world, including the US, I believe. So for Mark, you know, it's really about intergenerational connection, and for Anne, it's about creative care. So what do you want people to know about your work and those concepts? So shall we start with Mark?
Sure. Well, I very much want to take off on the point that you made, Hayoung, about the disjuncture between the changing demographics and society's preparedness for this tremendous growth in the older population. Here in the United States, one of the big problems is that we radically segregate people by age. We started the 20th century as one of the most age-integrated societies in the world, and ended it in what some have described as a state of age apartheid. And, you know, it wasn't a nefarious plot, but it's caused an enormous number of issues, ageism, social isolation, potential conflict between generations, and it's also represents a missed opportunity. And so now that the trends that you described are happening, we're at the doorstep of a much more multi-generational society. We already have more people over 60 than under 18. The question is this going to be, you know, a source of problems, of degeneration, to use that generational theme, or of regeneration, a chance to create a new togetherness across generations? And so that's where Encore is working. We're working to change mindsets, to change systems, to bring older and younger people together in ways that solve problems and forge bonds and bridge divides, and ultimately we hope change the default position of society, the norm, from one which pits generations against each other to one which brings them together, not only for their own benefit, but for the benefit of society.
Thank you. Anne, do you want to go?
Sure. I'm always mesmerized by the fluidity of Mark's descriptions, and I think they dovetail so well, because I think similarly, the way that we've approached aging and the changing demographics is to look at it as a medical and a health issue. And so one of the things that happens is that framework gets overlaid almost to the point of emptying out all other frameworks for older adults, particularly as they encounter disabilities, challenges of cognition or physical issues. They become really only seen through the box of health. And what we've done sort of is allow the separation of not just the generations, but also sort of the civic duty, the civic I would say, responsibility, and also framework as social citizenry, even if people have cognitive disabilities. And we take away learning, take away education, we take away arts and culture. We only see them through this very sort of suffocating box of medicine and care. And so what the concept that we're trying to do with time slips is really bring those things back together into this complex layering where it's we infuse creativity and the ability, no matter what one's abilities are, to make meaning and to continue being creative and meaning producers and valuable citizens all the way to the end of life. And Time Slips has really taken on the mission now of ensuring that systems open to meaning making and to allow meaningfulness and joy to happen all the way to the end of life.
Wow, that was as good as Mark. So don't worry. I see the common words coming up between you, really, the importance of mindset, changing frameworks, unboxing and creating new norms for all generations. So, okay, related to your work and vision, what patterns have you noticed in the popular culture or mainstream narrative over the years, if not decades, that are particularly intriguing to you or making you concerned? Can you provide some concrete examples or titles of the content that you want people to pay attention to? Shall we start with Anne this time?
Sure. I way back in 2009, which feels like many lifetimes ago at this point, I did a book called Forget Memory, which was really sort of interrogating how we represent memory and how we understand its function. And part of that book was reading different mainstream representations about memory loss. And really, particularly in hyper-individualistic cultures, we associate control of memory with one's identity. And so the narrative really becomes about tragedy, a really hyper-focus on tragedy when memory is lost. It's a loss of this shrine of individualism. And so I think some of the representations that I found to be representative of that, and particularly in a tragedy narrative where we pick the kings, right? We pick the people at the top of the order in order to show the greatest fall, very Shakespearean. And those were like Iris, the representation of Iris, a philosopher, a novelist, laid low by dementia. Representations in mainstream press of Ronald Reagan, president, whatever you thought of him, laid low by Alzheimer's. Very similar trajectory narratives of that. And some of the better ones, the really interesting ones that complicate those narratives, I actually found to be animations, because we also have a very funny association with the physical body, that there's a stigma associated with the aging body, and that animation allows us to kind of play with and work around. And so there's a chapter in that book about Finding Nemo and the character of the little blue fish with short-term memory loss, who is she's a main part of the storyline, and she's also beloved by the family. What she does in the storyline is crucial to the happy ending of the family, and she's integrated into the family as a valued member. And at that time, no other narratives like that were really around. So I see the tragedy narrative. I'm not saying there's no tragedy. I'm saying it can be complicated.
Yes, we really need to be sensitive about that. We're not promoting, dementia is not tragedy at all, right? But when it's only about tragedy, we lose so many valuable things. Thank you, Mark.
Yes. Well, I feel like I know we're going to talk some more about this later in the conversation, but as social innovators, as Ashoka Fellows, I think it's a remarkable moment because it's it's an expression, just drinking from a fire hose. There's so much happening in the popular culture around aging, around generational relations. It's unlike anything I've ever seen before, and I think it signals a kind of zeitgeist change. There's something in the air, and in the context of our issues, I feel like television in particular is helping to illuminate the choices in front of us. And one of my favorite illustrations of that is, I talked earlier about how essentially we've made a natural pattern of human thriving, of human behavior unnatural. And these generational relations until the last 100 years have been a central part of the human experience. And there's a show, The Kaminsky Method, on Netflix. And there's one scene in particular, I think, that captures what happened with the Michael Douglas character is facing prostate cancer and financial ruin. And he decides to take a walk in the park. He's feeling particularly depressed. And he comes upon a playground with children playing and joyous laughter, and it changes his whole outlook on life. And he sits down and he's kind of gets lost in this reverie. And in the background, first you see one mother and then a second mother and then a third, and then they're joined by a police officer. They've called the police because this older person is watching children. And I thought it just perfectly, it showed how art can capture, some essential truths in front of us. But at the same time, I think that just to take television, that's showing us a vision not of just of degeneration like we saw there, but of regeneration. Hacks, which won the Emmy for Best Comedy this year, demonstrates how an older and younger person, a comedian and a comedy writer, come together reluctantly for mutual benefit and revive each other's careers. But my favorite example is from France, the show Lupin, in which a young kind of activist, it's a change maker parallel, comes together with an older former investigative journalist, and they not only revive each other's spirits, but they help change the world. And it's also a story of coming together across age, race, culture. I think it's the perfect parable for the 21st century and the kinds of opportunities that are in front of us.
If I could just jump in there real quick, I love all those shows. I'm so glad you mentioned them. And I think too, we're also in a similar thing with people with cognitive challenges. There's a major breakthrough with the film The Father, which actually shows the experience of dementia from the inside of course, Anthony Hopkins as an incredible actor. It's the whole film is his perception, which we've never really done before. We've looked we tell the story from caregiver perspectives. I would say one thing, we have a ways to go with that one, which I found a leap ahead with the Lady Gaga and Tony Bennett 60 Minutes show, which is more sort of in the news part of culture making, is to show the joy of music. And I remember in the scene in The Father where you hear this loud opera music, and it's so beautiful. And then you realize he's listening to it. But later, a classic example of where we don't understand the strength and the connectivity of music and the power of it, when he's very confused at the end of the film, it's only seen as a tragedy. And I'm like, give him the headphones. Give him the headphones. Why aren't you giving him the headphones? Creating opportunities. We still can't see it as anything other than a tragedy in that film in the end. And I think it might have something to do with marketing as well. So there's still room in the dementia representation as opposed to the beautiful sequence. And I will just send everyone to go look at it when Lady Gaga is asked, is this a sad story? And she says, it's an emotional story. It shows that things can change and we can still be magnificent. And that one line just set the whole world of representation of dementia forward decades.
Wow, thank you. Listening to you, I really feel that we can even create our own television show, introducing or commenting on all these different content that are out there for the benefit of the people. Due to the time, I have to run to the next question. The last question, actually, for both Mark and Anne, is how can we, as social innovators who are striving to bring about systematic changes to the social problems and even go beyond that by accelerating paradigm change, or what Ashoka calls framework change, how can we better leverage or collaborate with the new potential allies, such as film industry, entertainment industry, even others? Mark, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, I do think it is an incredible opportunity. And as Anne was saying, it's in multiple arenas. It's in television. The Oscars this year, in addition to The Father, Nomadland, Minari were major winners. Lady Gaga and Tony Bennett have this best-selling jazz album. I think partly we can show this pattern. There's a famous quote of, if you can't dream it, you can't do it, right? We have a failure of imagination, and I think we can use this cultural material to help solve that problem. And I think learn from it too, to get the kind of the emotional core. I'm so glad Anne talked about that Lady Gaga line, which really stuck with me. And there's a video of them doing the song, I Get a Kick Out of You, which is just perfect. And she's crying in that song. And you realize it's tears of joy as well as sadness. And there's a way in which this is both timeless and time bound, right? This is their last collaboration. So I think we can use the pattern, we can show the pattern, but we can also shape the pattern. I think through telling stories, indirectly we can help influence what gets told in the popular culture. We can also work with these media companies. We had a partnership with Participant Media around the Best Exotic Marigold Hotel. We did a contest to surface stories along those lines. And I think there are increasing opportunities to do that. But I think we're still getting our feet under us in terms of how to make the most of what's happening.
Okay, Anne, please. Oh, you're on mute, Anne.
Yeah, I'm struck by one of the skills of Ai-jen-poo and caring across generations to really tap into, similarly to what Mark was describing, tap into existing films in order to sort of use that exposure to drive the narrative change and to call it out. And I screenshotted the homepage on the website, which they say every day we're telling our stories and taking action so that we can have the freedom to make the care choices that are right for us and our families. And the idea of linking story and action. And that Ai-jen-poo for the film Roma was invited to the Golden Globes and to the Oscars by Meryl Streep and by the director of Roma, and was really, again, Participant Productions, really doing incredible work to link activism and storytelling. And then also that journalists, since 2009, from the really prescient work of journalist Paul Clayman, to bring journalists together to the Gerontological Society of America to learn more about aging, the complexities of it, so that we don't keep doing these storylines that pit growth against decline. That we, as a complexity, I remember historian Thomas Cole, and in one of his early books said, Americans have a hard time, and Western cultures have a hard time having growth and loss, thinking about them and holding them together simultaneously. And that making storylines in which it's either or, we just that doesn't make sense anymore, because that means that aging is a failure, and it's not a failure. It's a nonsensical storyline in that situation. Human life is aging, and so human life is not a failure. So we have to get off of that either or storyline. So this year, just next week, there'll be 17 new fellows in the Journalists and Aging Fellows Program coming together to learn about how to have more complex storylines. And then the other thing I was going to mention on the next couple slides would be just this power of making sure that we invite the elders to tell their own stories and to infuse meaning making into care and services, all aspects of culture. This is just a shot from the time slips approach, tapping innate creativity and inviting existing strengths for expression, no matter what people's capacity. The photograph is actually from a project we did in Kentucky, reimagining the story of Peter Pan with 12 rural nursing homes. The Signature Healthcare Company jumped in and acted as a host there. And it was completely transformative to see meaning making opened up again for people for whom it had really been taken away. The next shot shows you a little bit of the culminating euphoria of a performance that we did based on the storytelling of Peter Pan, where everyone in the care home was part of the performance itself and could create this new story together and invite the community in to experience it together. This was a singing of the song "I'll Fly Away," choreographed by the elders and led by the elders for the audience. Really a powerful experience. And you can see marked intergenerational with the children of the staff members coming in as well. And then the next slide is just a storytelling of inviting people to tell their own superhero stories, where they created themselves as characters of superheroes and then decided that they didn't want to act individually. They made what was called the Righteous League, so that all of their adventures were taken together, and worked with an artist to do cartoon description or cartoon depictions of themselves as their own superhero characters, of Super Jake, the Super Reader, things like that. So just again, a reminder to open up meaning making and storytelling to the people themselves that we're trying to change the mindset shift around.
Thank you so much, Anne and Mark. Within the first less than even 30 minutes discussion and only hearing from two of our amazing fellows, we learned so much, and we already feel like our imagination is really opening up. Just imagine how much more we can learn and exchange by talking to a lot more social innovators and creative people out there. So thank you so much. And I think we learned so much from both of you already. In South Korea, we have actually started building something as a new experiment, and it's called the Social Innovation Museum, which opened early this year in Seoul, South Korea. And now I'm going to invite Jung-soon art director of Ashoka Space, the Innovation Museum, to present how she, developed this idea and what this museum is about and for. Jung-soon, please, it's your floor.
Hi. It's really nice to meet you, all of you. Yeah. I would like to, could you hear my voice? Yeah, okay. Then I would like to talk about today's topic by taking an exhibition I curated as an example. This is the exhibition currently being held in Ashoka Space, opened in Seoul, South Korea last year. Here are some stories I would like to share with you today. Yeah, let's begin. This exhibition introduced 10 Ashoka. Next slide, please. Yeah, this exhibition introduced 10 Ashoka fellows who approach the issue of aging society through the generational connection. Like other social problem, the issue of aging societies is very difficult to understand and very complicated to solve. So even though these issues are relevant to all of us, it's also a problem that everyone wants to run away from. It reminds me of a metaphor. There's an elephant in the room. I believe the Ashoka Fellows are people who turn their sight to the burdensome elephant in the room and willingly go with him wherever he takes them. It brings us to Elephant Project that Haeyang mentioned at the beginning. Inspired the famous fable, The Blind and Elephant, from Buddhist scriptures, I designed an art project called Touching an Elephant. This project for visually impaired people, they encounter the living elephant and create the artwork with their impression by sense of touch. The Elephant Project has been praised as a very subversive art piece. I think because everyone knows what elephant is, many are familiar with the story. People were able to get a just our project intuitively. In photo on the right is a scene in which Ashoka Korea Fellow give a lecture in the space where the artwork from the Elephant Project is displayed. As you see, these are not typical elephant shapes. Next slide. I thought that the display method to approach the fellows, who is the icon of innovation, should be also innovative. I think one of the presentation method is to utilize the cultural asset. We have a lot of cultural assets that have an impact regardless of the change times. Metaphors, stories, games, icon of literature, movies, etc. The two most important keywords I thought about this curation were encountering and time. In order to encounter fellows, an MBTI-like method was applied. And the visualizer of time, I was inspired by the movie Interstellar by Christopher Nolan. Next slide. For processing of the encountering, we developed our mobile application. So when the audience first walked into the Ashoka space, the audience downloaded this app and select the questions they emphasize with from pool of questions. Then through the matching algorithm, the audience answers with a fellow who shares similar thought to them. Next slide, please. I created the illustration that reflect the characteristic of each fellows and given each of them the type name based on the fellows' activities. Next. Yeah, as you see, I give the type name for Mark Friedman, insightful, innovator type, the 4N basting director who draw out one's creative times is right, and for Sergio, the ingenious planner type. Finally, the audience face themselves on the monitor along their matching fellow. Fellows may not know about this, but in the center of Seoul City here, they are taking picture every day with the Korean who think like them. Next. It's like this. It happened every day in here. And next. The movie Interstellar is essentially a film about human emotion and the meaning of time. In particular, there are certain scenes that gave me an idea to visualize the time as a metaphor of aging. Please, Anne, back. There were the scene where the father and daughter in different dimensions meet with the bookshelf in between. Father in the first dimension tried to communicate with his daughter in third dimensions. Another is this scene. Next. Well, because of a time gap between Earth and other planet, the couple of hours in the planet turn into the decade on Earth. As a result, the daughter, separated at a young age, become a grandmother and reunite with the father who is younger than his daughter. This scene makes us ask the fundamental questions of what is time, what is generation, what is family, and love. And next, through the effect of expanding the space with the reflection of the mirrors and gradation of lighting and cosmic ambience sounds, I want to create the exhibition space where you can imagine the existence time. Next. People have shared with us that they found it very enjoyable to interact with the world of fellows in this way, and they can feel also mise-en-scène of the movie as well. I think the utilizing familiar cultural resource, this exhibition served as a bridge for public to approach difficult social issues that they normally avoid. Yeah, and behind the story of my curation ends here. We restart the video tour where you can actually see the exhibition. Thank you so much, Johnny.
Hello, welcome to Time and Gradation exhibition in Seoul, South Korea. I'm Hae-young Lee from Ashoka. First, let me tell you about Ashoka. Ashoka is a global non-profit organization with a vision of everyone a change maker. Ashoka Space is where we exhibit stories of Ashoka Fellows who are solving social problems in a very creative way. Current exhibition introduces 10 Ashoka Fellows around the world who approach various issues of aging society through meaningful connections. Please download the Time and Gradation app and then enter the questions room. This is a room where everything such as light, gradation, mirroring, reflections is meant to make you think and feel what time is and therefore what aging is. There are 50 questions distilled from 10 fellows' works scattered inside the room. While working inside the room, you can choose more than 10 questions that most resonate with you. When you have selected all the questions, you are matched with one of the 10 fellows. As you leave the room passing through the curtain, you are asked to show your QR code to the tablet in front of you. You are now with the fellow you are matched with right on the big screen at the end of the corridor. Don't you want to know more about what the fellow's work is? You can watch a short video ready for you. Welcome to the second experiential section called On the Strings of Emotions. In our lives, whether you are young or old, we all experience loss and even death of someone or something. What did you feel then? Here, there are 50 words that describe our feelings. You can choose the string in one of the 6 colors and make connections between the words based on your own experience. With participation of more and more people, we will get to see beautiful tapestry made of countless strings of people's emotions. This is a corner where you can get a postcard of your fellow in a cartoon character. Shall we now go to the media gallery downstairs? We had conducted art workshops with children introduced to 10 fellows' works, and the creative drawings of the children have become the source of the digital media art, which is played on mega-sized screens.
The issues of aging are issues of every single one of us. We hope this exhibition helped you catch a glimpse of the changemaker instinct inside yourself. Everyone a changemaker. Ashoka Space.
Okay, I think we are now back. So I hope everyone enjoyed having this virtual tour of our exhibition in Seoul, which is a dream of Mark to experience himself. So Mark, and yeah, I will repeat the question. What is your reaction, and what do you think we can develop from here further?
Em, do you want to start?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, as a theater artist, I'm struck by the opportunities that this incredibly inventive and playful and holistic and positive approach brings to mind around creating environments where virtual or real, in which we have a complex interplay of generations and abilities together. And I think it brings to mind the multi-billion-dollar gaming industry and what's possible as well. And particularly as we move, I don't think we'll ever experience a flattening of the tech gap, because tech just keeps evolving so rapidly that there will always be sort of a tech gap. I see more of a tech shift, so that we can be more playful and learn to invite the people across generations into tech experiences that invite these playful scenarios. So yeah, Mark.
I love obviously everything that you've been saying, Anne and Director Ong, seeing the exhibit. I love that idea of intergenerational, INNER, intergenerational and transgenerational, and I think it just makes me think that this project is about stitching back together the wholeness of life and a coherent society, and one that has both intergenerational friendship, co-generational collaboration, and it seems like it all is so congruent with Ashoka's themes of the new togetherness, everyone a change maker, and meeting this multi-generational moment. So thank you for the inspiration and illumination.
Thank you so much. Because we have to sadly, close our session in 5 minutes, I think. We want to give the opportunity for the people who have joined this session from all over the world. And I have 2 questions in front of me. So I'll just share those questions so anyone can freely answer. Okay, so first question was from Chris Underhill. His question is, how does the voice of the older persons get included in your program design? So probably Anne and Mark, you can answer. And second question is from Ankit Garg from India. Wow. How do you suggest that people, full-time professionals outside of social sector, can help and contribute to social issues like this? Very good questions. Thank you so much. Very briefly, we can answer these questions. Anne, do you want to start?
Sure. The approach that we use with time slips is really about opening with beautiful questions, responding with using improvisation to propel the communication process forward, and then looping it all back with offering proof of listening. So that's what we teach people, but it's also how we use how we develop our programming and how our organization works. So it's always an open and fluid improvisational process to incorporate the voices of all of the people that we're engaging with, from caregivers to elders, young people, students who are learning this as a tool in service learning, family caregivers, neighbors, as the circle widens, they're all part of that improvisational feedback loop.
One of the new areas that we're working in is conversations between older and younger change makers. And after many years of focusing particularly on older voices, we have a new podcast called Greater Than, which is a series of conversations between older and younger people who are working on the same issues. It starts out with the story of Nuns and Nuns, which are a group of millennial changemakers who sought out older women religious to find out what it means to live a life devoted to social change and social impact. So we're right now in this chapter of our organization very much focused on the voices of older and younger people coming together.
Yes, I was on mute. Thank you very much. Again, sadly, I think we have to close this session. I really believe this is only the beginning of something much bigger and very promising, and even $1 million or $1 billion potential to co-create for the humanity. So please keep your attention and interest and passion for this topic. It's more than a topic, we believe. And Ashoka also will explore this possibility of marrying social innovation content with creative content out there, and really work with a lot of creative, talented people in the world. So we will keep you posted. So to close this session, really, I want to make the announcement for what's happening after this. So now, before we finish, I want to really remind you that members of our community are invited to the facilitated connecting session starting in a minute, and that you can join it by clicking in the Zoom link on the description of the session starting next on swap card. To the rest of the audience joining from everywhere in the world, we thank you for your attention and your questions also, and we hope to see you again. Not in Seoul if you can make it to our museum, but certainly in many different parts of the world. And also, please come to our next Thursday session at ACMS. Which is redefining success and systems change, insights from women and queer change makers. Such an important topic. Thank you, everyone. It was a fabulous night, even though it's close to midnight in Seoul. But really, thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you.